Good afternoon. This is a special board meeting for the budget. Yesterday we did electric, water, and cable. Today we're going to study where we are with the administration expenses and budget. I'm Anna Marie Pavlik-Rosen, Chair of the Board. To my right, Walt Baldwin, Vice Chair. Don Hale, Secretary Treasurer. Member Steve Mason, Member Jeff Bradshaw, and Attorney for the Board, James Liebman. Our first item is to approve, this is from our first item is to continue to review the 1920 year budget, starting with administration.
Mr. President, the board, good afternoon. Picking up with our administrative department, as I mentioned, administrative departments, as I mentioned yesterday, overall, we compare last year's budget to this year's budget. We are down 3.5% overall. So we'll walk through each of those this afternoon, bring up our department heads, have you a chance to see them and ask any questions you may have. As I did with the other departments, I'll do a quick summary of the overall, how we sit and trends. Something I want to point out, we can go ahead and flip over to page 23. This is right behind our administrative overhead budget tab. So this is mainly for those in the audience and those tuning in to kind of give an idea of how this works with our administrative overhead departments. So each of the departments, of course, have a big role in helping to contribute and deliver the services we provide to our community each day. And also, a lot of these are internal customers, how we interact with our departments internally. We go through a set of allocation factors to determine what percentage of activity occurs in each department that we can attribute to each of our three main lines of business. So you'll notice that each of the pages under this administrative overhead section at the very bottom have an administrative overhead allocation. So these amounts show the percentage that is allocated to each direct line of business. So starting with page 23, we're going to talk about, this is just a very general section, expenditures that aren't attributable to a direct support department, administrative department, or to a direct line of business with electric or telecom. So I'm going to just do the highlights, and then we can walk through some of the things that stick out or are new. And once again, fluid format, anything you would like to talk about or questions, just let me know. So starting here, it looks a little odd on line 5, but I want to explain payroll that we have. We do our best to allocate payroll to the division that it is attributable to. It's very important across the company, especially with our telecom division. We want to know what it costs us to provide each service, and that definitely helps us to be able to determine what we need to charge in rates, and helps us to really drill in on make sure we can have and charge the lowest cost for our services. So when we have after hours call, there are a couple of positions that do general on-call, social media outages, internet outage type payrolls that occurred. We do not have those budgeted going forward because those are going to be put into our NOC after hours dispatch. Employee benefits. Within our employee benefits line 10, I'm looking at the estimated year to date. You'll notice a figure there that we have put in, $202,000 actual for this year. $154,000 of that is attributable to the old retirement fund that Frankfort Plant Board had prior to joining Kentucky Retirement System. Whenever we issued annuities or paid out benefits to the remaining members of that retirement plan, we had to show the expense for those benefits somewhere. This is where it landed. I just want to point that out, that you'll see $200,000 this year versus $26,000 going forward. The $26,000 going forward, we do and have for years paid a $5,000 life insurance policy on retirees from Plant Board. So most of that money is what that expense is in that line. So I just wanted to point that out. Looking at the biggest thing, expense in this area is our depreciation. on our general administrative assets, line 45. This is just simply a function of the depreciable, the cost of the asset and how the depreciable life and the depreciation is booked each year. So that is, this is on this building, and every other administrative type asset that we have is posted to this line item. Line 55, corporate insurance. These are all the insurance policies that usually come to the board in January. Most of our policies run from a February to February annual term. So I just, you can see that as we talk about year to year, those have remained very flat over time. Trying to see the other thing I'd point out, line 105. Back in 2015, the FPB Board of Directors and City Commission agreed to some services back and forth. Part of it was the rent on the old building downtown, which we now have left. Another is a use of city assets fee. So just per that agreement, we've booked, that's $109,000. It is set to increase 10% every 5-year period. So we actually, just looking at this today, notice that needs to go up in year 2, 2021. We'll increase that by 10% to be reflected in years 2 through 5. But other than that, I'll look at other revenue. When you have other revenue, these are items throughout the budget that are not directly related to our electric, water, telecom services. So when we have miscellaneous here, line 130, it's just all the different various revenues that don't fit into that mold. And then you'll see on line 165, all the interest that we have and receive from our investments land in that line, which correlate to the monthly cash and investments report that we provide to you in your board packet. So,
So David, were you going to add something there for room rental since there's nothing there?
we are looking, if you were to look at the overall budget, we've had the last 2 years very close to $9,000. And that's something Ms. Haley pointed out. We don't have anything budgeted for that, so we would like to add back in what we believe will be close to the same year, $9,000 for this community room rental. So I
But
would
it'll
like,
actually be on the next page, 4051.
yeah. So
That's where the actual's at.
So it's in, it'll be next page, but
Yeah.
you're right, that's what it is. So overall, this budget, particularly, it's down 5.5% from last year. The details on page 51, I'd be glad to walk through any items you might want to look at or answer any questions. If not, I'd like to turn over and discuss what we call the actual administration budget. This is page 24. You can find the detail on pages 52, the line item detail. I'll just start at the top, line 5. You'll notice there are some changes to payroll line and which are explainable. The board approved some organizational changes for the plant board recently. What we look to allocate in payroll are positions that are administrative in general, not specifically to be allocated to any one service, but serve the company overall. So you have the general manager's salary, the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer. So changes in moving and allocating some of those payroll numbers to there is elevated that from a previous year. So it's really a matter of where those were allocated within the budget. So I just want to point that out as why you see that increase. Utilities, line 115. So utilities related to administrative departments, primarily this building. Interest, line 130. Interest expense. So this is the interest expense on our electric and water revenue bond, series 2015A, which was to finance the construction of this administrative building. Those are the main things that I just wanted to point out and highlight in this budget. As I say, overall, the administrative departments are down 3.5. This is the one department that is up, and primarily due to reallocation of payroll.
I had a question on page 52,
Yes.
the last item on that. Community engagement program. What is that? Is that,
That's gonna be me. I'll talk about it when I'm up
oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
So I tell you what, this is a great time. If you want to, go ahead. We typically have Kathy Lindsay, our public information coordinator. I know it's always a lot of her, of course, programs are forward-facing and getting information out to our customers and stakeholders. So if you'd like you mentioned, Ms. Rosen, pulling over to page 52, we're looking at the last two lines of 52 and the first four of 53. So I'll turn it over to Kathy to walk through her budget and just discuss plans for next year.
Okay. Well, yesterday you got to hear about when we discussed all the exciting things we have going on and projects that we have coming up. So my role as the public information coordinator is to ensure that our customers are aware of these projects and how these projects affect them and their services. So that's a big deal, I think. In addition, and just as important, is the role of internal communications, and that's communicating with our employees. They need to be well informed on the activities of the company, and as our ambassadors who are in the front line with our customers, they should feel confident to address customer questions and concerns. So all of that takes planning and resources, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. The budget requests for these goals that we have can be divided into two groups, which is community outreach programs and our administrative needs. So, excuse me. Community outreach programs, it's just something that I found as far as getting involved in the community. It's a great way to build relationships and boost visibility and brand awareness. Whether it's by taking part in community programs that we do regularly, like this month we'll be set up at the longest day of play. We go and do the summer concert series, doing sponsoring events like the summer concert series, or enabling employee volunteerism, which is something that we've discussed recently, starting a volunteer program for our employees. Involvement in the community can provide multiple benefits as a result, such as a happier workforce or a more loyal customer base. So just to start out, we'll talk about the community engagement program that I have listed here with a budget request. And this is an investment to provide FPB presence and participation in local events like we have been doing. And it also provides educational opportunities at popular local events throughout the year. It provides a vehicle to promote things that we're doing and promote our brand, promote Frankfort on Tap, and just other information that we have like portal info, energy efficiency. We're going to be talking about AMI a lot, so we want to be out in the community to be able to talk about what we're doing with AMI and what it means to our customers, fiber to the home. So some of the things that we're doing, like I said, we're doing the summer concert series, candlelight tour we set up there, farmers market, Christmas parade, Easter egg roll, longest day of play, the Chamber of Commerce reality store. We're going to be doing bourbon on the banks this year. We'll have something set up for that, and there are just other opportunities. We have something every month for the rest of the year set up to do. So these funds are funds that we need to do stuff like this bag. We have these are all things that pertain to our services. We have these LED bulbs. We have our bottles. We have information. Our partnership with the Grand Theater, information about water, our power giving program, energy efficiency tips, winter's coming, just stuff that we can give out, just to remind people of the services that we provide. And all of it has our contact information. And we've also done something like this before. This is, you get a free video on demand movie, a little coupon, just a little giveaway. And like I said, we have found that the more we're out in the community, the more people ask us to be out in the community, and we get really good feedback when we're out, and it also makes us accessible. If people have questions about our services and they see that we're out in the community and nice and supporting whatever local event we're helping to support, it's been a really great experience this past year. So I would hope again, I was just telling Dawn before the meeting started, the more we do, the more it just kind of builds. People see us at one event and they want us to come to another event, and they really love the water monsters. And again, that's what this money is for. It's not writing a check for anything. It's just for our participation in local events. The next one is the scholarships. This will be the third year for scholarships. We awarded 3 $2,000 scholarships to a student from each public high school last June, and we're in the midst of doing that again this year. As a community-owned public utility, it's important to recognize the value of post-secondary education in our community and the need to foster local students into the workforce. And Customer Appreciation Day. As a customer-owned public utility, it is critical that we value our customers and recognize the role they play in the success of this company. So I have included a request in here for an annual Customer Appreciation Day. We had our big celebration last year for the 75th anniversary, and this is kind of a toned down version of that, but we got so much good feedback from that. It was well received from our customers, and I think this is something that we could do. A lot of companies do a Customer Appreciation Day. And again, it's just no more than setting up something out in the parking lot, having something out in the lobby for our customers, just a day to show them that we do appreciate them, because again, they own us. So I think it's a good idea just to, set aside at least one day for them, right? So that's what that is. We'll move on to just administrative needs, just like every other department that is working here. Everybody needs the right tools and resources to get their job done. And so with public information, it's no different. There's just resources that you need to be able to do your job. So I have in here a request for educational materials. And this is mostly printing for the inserts that we do. If we ever do career days, a lot of times there's a company that prints things that we can take that are like activity books that show you how the water flows, how it goes through the water treatment process. There's also stuff about how electricity works, and it's just information that we can share with students. And again, it also is a good opportunity to set aside some funds for when we do want to start talking about AMI and things that educational materials that we can produce from that. The next is communications media training. We've had this in there every year, and it hasn't gone up from last year. It's just continuing education is important in all positions, and just being able to help our employees have continued training and how to have better people skills, and really put together. Right now, we're using that money to put together a good plan, especially with our customer service and all of our employees, our frontline employees, to be able to carry our message out with one message. And then the next is just an employee appreciation event, smaller scale, just like Diane was saying yesterday, employees are the backbone of this company. And when employees are recognized for their work and validated for their work, they just tend to be happier. They produce more. They continue to produce good work, or maybe even improve upon their work. And just, I think having that validity from their employers is just, it's a good thing for them. That's all I have. I talked about everything on my budget because it's just me. So,
I have a question.
Yep.
You didn't mention anything about any community support programs.
Yeah.
For instance, we talked yesterday about the water stations in schools.
Yep.
But we didn't talk about anything dealing with nonprofits as far as it is in association with the things we provide. And I thought, for instance, the soup kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of people in and out there. They may see a need for a water bottle filling station. The Sunshine Center may think that they can save money on the electric bill if they replaced all of their lights with LED light bulbs, but they don't really have the money to go out and do that, so they could come to us. Last year last budget year, when Franklin County came to us wanting help with the water fountains for Western Hills and Franklin County High School, one of the reasons that the board didn't want to do that was because we didn't have a program in place and a policy for community support. And so I would really like to see some money in your budget for community support programs for, as different things come up in the year. So I'd like to see like about $25,000 in your budget, or at least 15.
Mhm.
I mean, we're saying 15 for water fountains in the schools, for a 3-year, 15 each year. So I really don't think it's unrealistic to have another 15,000 for community support programs.
Okay. We're often asked, and I know we discussed this last year, FPB's often asked for support and sponsorships of programs in our community. I get at least one a week from, and they're mostly nonprofits, but from the schools, from associations like the American Cancer Society. We got one today, I can't remember what it was, but basically, if this is something that we wanted to do, other municipal utilities do this, and again, we discussed this last year. They have programs set up. They have community giving programs where there's a set amount, say if you wanted to say $15,000, and people can apply. They send it, the board would set up an application for, there's this certain amount. The way I would suggest that we do it, and I think, again, this is something I gave you guys at one point, there's a set amount of money, and programs can apply for it, nonprofits can apply for it. We wouldn't do any support for for-profits, but nonprofits could apply for it, and we would give the money as we get the request, and once that designated amount is gone, then it's gone until the next budget year, and people can understand how they would need to get the requests in, because if with a set amount, other companies do it where they set up a committee, and they set up you fill out an application, and they have a committee that goes through all the applications and judges things on a case-by-case basis to decide who to award money to. And again, if that's something that you wanted to do, we could work that out. But again, that's how it's been done before. For me, obviously, because I'm a PR person, I think it's a great idea, because people like that kind of stuff. And again, we've talked about being involved in the community, and I know how many requests we get every year. Other municipal utilities that I have talked about this with, and they've sent me information about it, what they do, they all agree that they get a good return on their investment with this, and they consider the programs a win-win, just because not only are we getting, we are helping someone in the community, we get the good feels from that, but then they also get the support that we give them. And again, as we talked about before, especially in a community like Frankfort, we're all here to support each other, and and especially right now, there's a lot going on, and anything that we can do to help support other people in our community, I obviously would support, and I think it would be great if FPB could be kind of at the front of that.
Excuse me. I'd just like to reiterate something I said, I guess, last year on this on the water fountain, and is that it feels like we're walking without a plan into a project. And I'd like to see a developed project plan. At that point, I said I didn't want to do the Western Hills because I knew there were 13 others that, as Anna Marie has brought, schools potentially out there. Wanted to see what the total cost would be. As we start down being supportive of other initiatives in the city, I'd like to see a plan. I don't want to be known. I don't want the plan. it's good to be known as benevolent to everyone, but that's not our business. I don't mind being somewhat benevolent in those fashions that you're talking about, but my benevolence would like to be targeting the ratepayers. Is if we set up a fund to help people who couldn't pay their bills.
I think it's a great idea.
No, I know, I understand that,
Yeah.
but that's targeting, staying within our lane, quote unquote, of benevolence. But if we go down the other lane, which I don't have a problem with, I just want to know clearly what it is and the scope of it before we say, okay, we're going to put $25,000 to do this and have that and that. Clearly define the scope of it. Clearly define the amount up front that we're going to approve or not approve, and so everyone understands what it is. So anybody that has a request for money to support something worthy doesn't say, well, the plan board does it, and then when the plan board doesn't do it, they say, oh, why not plan board? Clearly define parameters,
Okay.
clearly define an amount before I want to do that in this budget right here. So that
Okay,
makes any
go ahead.
sense.
And I would just like to add, I think some of our board members have paved the road for that. We've put in place good programs that can be expanded. We're going through a trial phase with Frankfort on Tap and some of the other programs and ideas. But it seems like we're in a good position, and once we articulate how these programs will materialize, we can propose those and also propose additions or how we budget for in the future with different community programs. But I agree with you, Steve. Having a good solid program in place will at least put us in the right direction and give us the operating parameters that will make that successful.
Well, did you?
I'll just back up.
Okay, go ahead, Don.
We have put money in this budget for other things that we have not totally decided on. We've not really discussed Wi-Fi in public places, but we've got a placeholder in the budget for it. The decision on the rebates is not finalized, but we've got a placeholder in the budget for it. So,
No, I agree with you there.
and so putting money in this, I don't see the point in waiting for next budget year to put money in the budget for a community support program when we can have the money in the budget for it, just like we've done with the other things that are still in the discussion and working out phase, to have it in there and we work out the details,
Yeah. Well, my comments were not to put it in the budget as a placeholder, as the other things that you just said. I agree with you. I was just giving you my comments on what I'd like to see to happen before. What I've said could happen within the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Develop a policy that is before us, what the parameters are to be eligible for the monies, and an amount, because I don't want this balloon to 100, 200, then one day is $200,000 a year toward. That's not, in my opinion, the role of the utility. But if it's going to be in an amount, I'd like to know what it is and what's the criteria to be able to get the money. That can happen in the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So I'm not
I'd
talking
be happy
about.
to draft something for you guys based on what other municipal utilities are doing, and I can have something to you midweek next week.
Just before the next vote.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to add something to that. One thing that we've talked about that Gary has brought up was the idea of a foundation. And
Yeah,
I think
that's great.
that is a better position, Steve was just saying, of staying in our lane. The Frankfort on Tap program is to promote our water and to promote it in 2 ways, public parks and city schools, or public schools. And so that's a focus on our product, staying in our lane kind of thing. These other ideas I think are good and help the community, but I think a foundation would be better set up that way. Members from the community on that foundation board, having some money and figuring out what parameters they want to set up, how they want to work, I think is a better choice. Gary, maybe you have experience with setting up foundation ideas and maybe could give us some ideas. here.
I appreciate this opportunity to talk about that. Really, I heard a lot of you, each one of them talk to me about a foundation. So if you would like to ask staff, we can start a process. At least to find out how to do it, how long take us to do it, then be ready for next time when you say let's do that, then we can start the process. We definitely can do that if you want us to do that.
Well, I mean, you said the next time. I'm not sure why the budget process has to be the beginning or the end of that, the evolution of that project. I do like the foundation that you were mentioning, but that's a little different than what I think we're talking about here. These are just little bitty, couple $1,000s here and things, and so I mean I agree, but I also strongly agree that we need to think about the foundation, because there's too many people around here that aren't able to pay their utility bills, struggle with it, and I think if we can do that's a win-win.
Yeah. And I would rather see us go in the direction of a foundation too.
I don't think it's either or, in my opinion, on what
I
she's
do,
saying.
because I think it's back to your own, stay in your lane conversation. I think the foundation covers all of our goals here, and it's a bigger potential benefit in the long run, and it doesn't necessarily have to be next budget cycle.
That's where I think it can be done now.
We can certainly.
It can start after the budget.
Yeah, we can certainly quantify that and figure out what it is and make sure it fits everybody's goals and let that move forward to cover all these needs.
But the foundation, as I understood it, would have been to deal with the utility payment problem.
Not necessarily. I don't think we just talked about scope.
It's really designed, you're going to decide the scope of that foundation. I think definitely primary idea is help the people really need help.
Well, my thought on the foundation, that it would be the basis would be to help people with their utility experience, payment experience, whatever it might be in that realm. But to get beyond that, I think we should just do kind of what Kathy is talking about. Whatever the amount of money it is that you define, that we could decide on, and the parameters, because you've been doing some of those type of things for. I'm not going to ask you how long you've been here, but
I've only been here 2 years.
Okay, but so those things aren't going to seat their youth. I just don't want it to expand to where every organization, every club, every whatever comes and points to us to be a source.
And I think that's where, we're trying to help with running the plant board, providing the basic services and keeping, our financial system moving. And doing these other things really falls into a separate category, which would be a different foundation. And that's what, my husband's family's business does. They sent up, a project specifically for that and kept it separate from the operation of the business. And I think that helping people with their bills or figuring out a program for that and, service to other nonprofits all fit into that foundation concept.
I'm not opposed to the foundation. I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's one of the things that I really liked when we interviewed Gary, that I thought was a wonderful thing to do. But I see a difference between the function of the foundation and a community support program. And I'm not talking about someone coming and wanting money for the American Cancer Society necessarily. I mean, things that have to do with electric, water, and cable. And because those things are our lane. And so when just using the soup kitchen, if they say, look, we have people in and out of here all the time, having a water bottle fill-up station would really be advantageous to our clients. That's something we do. And so it could be as part of the community support program. I think the foundation is a wonderful idea, and it would really help our clients that have a hard time paying their bills. And I think, it would be a nonprofit. It's a tax exemption when you contribute. I think that's a whole different subject than supporting different community initiatives with their needs that go along with what we do here as a utility. So I would hope that we would have the foundation, but we would also have community support programs.
I'm not very supportive of being in a direct, giving direct funding role. To me, it seems, one, I question whether we can legally under the KRS, but two, it just seems outside of our lane based on our mission to deliver power and be good stewards of our customers' money. So I'm very comfortable with moving into the foundation thing, and that seems like a good mechanism to address all these things and keep us clear from any of those concerns about direct funding.
But what's
It
the
just seems like a
difference?
better mechanism for us.
What's the difference in direct funding with the community support program and direct funding water fountains in the schools?
Well, the water fountains in the schools were promoting Frankfort on Tap.
Right, and the same with
Providing-
the same with your example with the soup kitchen. The expansion of the existing program for water fountains to nonprofit organizations like that. I think that's a different program than having a bucket of money that folks can just come and apply for a portion of.
See, the problem though with that, Walt, is that, for instance, when Kathy mentions the Friday night concerts and things like that, where we may have some nominal expense of contribution down there, she would have nowhere to go to get that. As opposed, she would have to go to a foundation to get the expense money to do whatever our involvement is. First of all, we would be a separate entity, so we couldn't do that. So when you have the either or, like you're saying, you don't have the money to do those things that the concerts on Friday nights or the events that you noted here. She doesn't have the money to do that
Well,
in
that's-
the either or
That's
fashion that
community
you're talking.
engagement. And
Right.
Well, that's what
we have
kind of what
done.
we're talking about with
We're
what.
not giving them money, we're
No.
just providing services via
Right,
the
the
Water
Water
Monster.
Monster,
and those
yeah.
kinds of things.
Information.
That is our community engagement program. That is,
No,
that is
I
in the
get
budget.
that, but it's
As far as community support, and the way that I envision it, as far as if we give money to a nonprofit, we would expect something in return as far as marketing, as far as when they came and requested the water fountains, it's a marketing opportunity because we would be able to put our brand on those water fountains. I mean, and it's better than a billboard as far as it's something that's in the schools that people see all the time. It has FPB on it. It has Frankfort on Tap on it. And so when other people come and they, want us to sponsor something that they're having, it has to be taken into consideration. Well, what are we getting in return? And that's always the case as far as marketing, PR and marketing goes. You get a sponsorship package. How many times are we going to be mentioned on the radio, or how many we're going to have our logo on the sponsorship sign that's there, or if we do sponsor an event, it's the Frankfort Plant Board walk run, or to support whatever foundation or whatever nonprofit it is. We're getting something in return. We're not just writing a check. That's the way I see it as far as that's how we justify any expense. It's marketing.
I guess my thought is I'd like to see staff get together, some sense of what the structure would be if we had a foundation, give us some sense of what services we could provide there, and then we'd have something written down we can talk around and see if it fits all of our goals.
I like that idea because we've all contributed some ideas here, and the foundation concept is the most undefined at this point, and so to have something written out would be helpful.
We certainly can do. It is not unusual as a utility to have a foundation. I think all the investor-owned utility, like Kentucky Utility, I think almost all the co-op have a foundation, and municipal is kind of in the mix. Not a lot of them have that. But I think Paducah does have their own foundation set up to support the customer. The primary goal is to help the people really need help. And also the second part is not necessarily use our ratepayer money, is really using the resource from outside to support them. That's the second part idea. But we definitely can make it ready for you to make that decision.
That'd be great.
The first part that we probably need a direction from this board is, do we need to write a policy for you to have a certain hold for the community support program? That part we are not really sure.
Okay. Well,
Do
yeah.
you want us to do?
I'm opposed to the community support idea. I like community engagement. Telling people about our products and services and improving their understanding of energy efficiency, things like that. So engagement I'm in favor of. The direct support to community, I think should go through the foundation. And I would
But let me
see it
ask you,
that way.
Kathy, when you talked about some of these, are all of these things engagement? The 20,
The events themselves I have as included in the community engagement.
so do we pay monies to some of these
No.
events to help sponsor any?
No, that's just our participation. That's us going and participating in the event. We set up a booth. We have the things that we share with our customers.
I think like Bourbon on the Banks, we're doing electricity.
We are doing drops.
So that, but that's expense.
We do a lot of in kind.
Well, those are
So-
services. They're not
again,
payment to anyone.
Again, it is the kind of, let me put it this way,
Yeah.
whether we voted up or down, if you want to develop a policy,
I'm
the
happy to do that.
parameters for that, for me,
Uh-huh.
and I will present it, and the amount, then we can vote it up or down.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that also.
Yeah, glad to do it. That's all for me. Unless y'all want to talk some more.
I think that is it for our administration.
Well, I had one thing on scholarships.
Yep.
I think in the past, the scholarships have gone to whoever, I guess we partnered with the Rotary,
Uh-huh.
and they decide who gets the scholarships, or how have we focused those? My goal is I'd like to see them focused on people that we hire, like
Right.
line workers, customer service.
And that's what we've tried to do among the applicants that we receive.
Okay.
And they share those, well, among all the public high schools. And the counselors and the administration there are getting those applications out. Thank you. And then a committee from the Rotary Club, the Rotary Youth Fund Foundation, they have a foundation. They go through all of the applications, and I'm on that committee. And they know it's one of our criteria is, that it's focused on some kind of either career and technical education or a job, that again is in our lane. So right now, I've been surprised at how few students apply for scholarships these days. It's I can't remember how many scholarships that the Rotary Club offers through us and other businesses. The dentist office has one, and then the Rotary has some, and then some other businesses offer scholarships through the Rotary. And this year there were only 30 applications.
Do you think the message is getting to the counselors that help people fill out
Well,
the
that's
applications?
something that the Youth Fund, Rotary Youth Fund, has talked about being more proactive and going to the schools and making sure that the counselors are really staying on top of it as far as getting the applications in their hands and talking. All you have to do is apply and tell us why you're going to college, why you want to go to college, and those scholarships are based on there's a rubric of need is considered, academics is considered, community support. I think those are the three main things. And I think next year they're also going to factor in, they're going to change the formula and add in student leadership to be considered as one of the criteria. But this year we have 3 recipients, and we've Miss Rosen came into Western Hills and gave it to our recipient there, who is going to Eastern and is going to major in engineering. She wants to go into engineering. Our student from Franklin County is from the Career and Tech Center, and she's going to the Welding Institute down in Jacksonville, I believe. So she's going to go into welding. And then our Frankfort High student who hasn't been, he doesn't know yet so, because it's tomorrow. No, the student doesn't know yet because their award ceremony is tomorrow morning. But yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, yeah, and that.
I don't want to give it away, but actually they won't see this.
He won't know
going
until
into
tomorrow anyway.
computer information systems.
Yeah, and
So.
the one Western Hills was civil engineering, so roads and bridges, which is kind of like doing water lines. in a way. Well, I mean, it's
Yeah, I
transportation
understand.
of stuff. Okay,
So,
good. Well, thank you for the update.
absolutely, sure.
All right, I'd like to move on to our Board of Directors budget on page 25. There is the largest, well, the single question I have is last year, I think the board decided to do $3,500 per board member for continuing education. We only have 1,000 in there. I was going to look for direction in how the board wanted to go. We can continue the same funding level. But we have all the same type of expenditures and just about in line with last year. I'd be glad to go through any detailed item on the board's budget.
As far as board education, does this, the actual is what was used in 1718?
So the
And-
second line is our budget of $3,500 per member, total $17,500. We've had use of that. We've not used all of it and don't expect it to use all of it this year. And that's probably the one that I'm looking for direction, if you would like to continue existing funding levels or at least keep last year's the same, or if you want. Other than that, it's all standard year to year.
I guess my suggestion would be we keep it where we had it last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of that too. I know Jeff and Walt went to at least one educational thing, and I went to one last year. So I think it's good use of spot in the budget. At that same level as before.
We'll put that back. We'll put the existing level last year if everybody's all right with that, and that should be the only other change that you'll probably see in our next and hopefully final version. Be glad to go through any other items you might have questions on.
I have a question. What's the retirement percentage you pay for employees? The retirement percent.
Retirement percentage, is it 21.48, and we're moving up
So that's
12% each year. We're the county employment retirement system,
It goes to 24.06 starting
July 1. And then we're up 12% a year until it maxes right now, as far as we know, at 28.05. So it's going up 12% a year right now.
So do you have an unfunded liability cost? What's that?
We
What's
do.
that percent?
It's in our balance sheet that we provide each month. It's around $20 million.
I mean, but what is it if you could put it on an employee, say on $100? How much would you pay on $100?
So we pay 21 cents of every dollar we pay to a employee. We pay to Kentucky Retirement System.
But is that the normal cost versus the unfunded liability?
That is, no, the unfunded liability is booked on the balance sheet. It is recorded as an expense, but all we do is pay the required contribution set by KRS each year. If we were to consider leaving the retirement system, we'd have to.
But you pay toward the unfunded. For instance, others, it's like 8% for medical, 8% for the normal cost, and like 60-something%?
Yeah, we just required to pay the required set contribution that starts each July 1, and then it's up to investment returns on the plan and any other.
No, I
that's-
understand that part, but
Right.
what do you pay percent-wise per
As an employee,
Not you, the employer. What does the employer pay for each employee toward the normal cost and the unfunded liability?
I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna keep honing in on this until I get what you need. I think
Well, here's what I'm saying. Here. You've heard the talk of the state government and stuff, where people are paying for every dollar they pay a person, their employee, they pay 83 cents toward the retirement. Part of which, or most of which, is the unfunded liability. So I'm asking you the question in that context.
based on the way it's, I can't give you an exact number, but I can say we're probably not touching the unfunded liability, to be honest with you. I mean, our unfunded liability year to year, we get an actuarial report that we book, and that amount is, if anything, it goes up year over year.
It
So
does
we're-
go up, but
So we're not, so that means we're
but
not
it goes
paying
up
into it.
with the number of employees you have and what the pay is.
Yeah. All I can do is tell you exactly for what we pay per employee. The unfunded liability portion is a much bigger calculation. For what this board has to do is each dollar we pay out to an employee, we pay over 21 cents today, going up to 24 starting like 20 days from now.
But the number of employees you have and the amount they make impact both of those costs.
It does.
So that's what I'm asking
We've
you,
got
is
an
that-
extremely amazing report that would put you to bed very quickly on the actuarial information that I'd be glad to get to you after this meeting.
Well, I'm not talking about the actuarial, because I understand that part. I'm not understanding how it impacts the plant board. As other state agencies know, they can tell you, budget can tell you how much it impacts per employee their budget.
We have, at the end of the year, every year in June, we book the adjustments to the unfunded liability. So depending, for example, I'll tell you what, I'll send some information to answer your question.
Well, I'll ask it offline.
Exactly, that's why. Yeah. So let's see here.
Okay, what I'm trying to find out is how much is our retirement cost a year? I mean, that's been the issue for the last 3 months downtown. You know, the universities are talking about paying 83 cents or 49% toward their unfunded liability, toward their retirement costs. And I'm just trying to figure out what we pay since we're in the retirement system.
Yeah. So David, if I understand your question right, I mean, wait till David's finished. Yeah. Go ahead. So I guess if I understand the question right, we've got this unfunded liability out there, but we're not paying any revenues towards it now to bring it down. Is that basically what's going on?
Yeah, so the way it's laid up, a portion of it that we pay into the Kentucky retirement system goes to the employees'
Right.
funding of their part of retirement, the
Mhm.
contribution. The rest is going to fund administrative costs and part of the unfunded liability. So we have around a $20 million unfunded liability. If you look at around 200 employees that are full-time receive it, about $100,000 per employee we owe. This is a very complicated question, and I think offline is a really good way to handle it.
Thanks. I was trying to get to that in a simpler way, but yeah, that's.
I can tell you, as we put in our assumptions, the plant board next year will pay, $3.3 million FPB in our budget, what we will pay in to contribute to the system for each full-time employee. But I understand what you're talking about, and that's. Is there anything else on the board of directors budget you'd like to cover? If not, we move over to customer service. I'll ask April to come up. I'll go through a little quick summary, but April is one of our customer service supervisors. So I'll have her here to answer any particular questions you may have for her. You'll notice that we are down budget to actual for the year, about 20% for various reasons. And we are down about 2.5% when you compare the budget we are proposing for next year versus the current
What page
budget.
are we on, Dave?
We are on page 26, and the detail for customer service, line item detail, page 55, so we can flip back and forth as you all may like. We are proposing no new positions to customer service. We are down in every category except line 100, which is our interest and expense on customer deposits. The Public Service Commission sets interest rates that are to be paid on customer deposits held by utilities. Those rates have been increasing year over year since 2015. They do mimic and flow with financial rates, interest rates as well. So it's not surprising those have gone up. So the increase from budgeted amount to actual this year to next year are totally due to interest rates and what we assume to be our balance of customer deposits. If there's any specific details on the line item you'd like to go to or go through, April's here and I would be happy to talk about those.
I just have just a question. How long do we keep the deposits that customers make? Are they kept for a specific amount of time?
Until they leave the system, until they decide to move their account for whatever reason. As long as it's, if they're moving, of course, within our service territory, it's kept, but.
They can ask for those deposits to be refunded because we do it based on credit history. So as far as the electric and water deposits, once they have history with us for a year, if they have good credit history with us, they can ask for those to be refunded at that time.
Just wondering
But
if that's-
typically, unless they ask for it, it does stay on because the system doesn't generate their credit history to let us know that.
I just wonder because I signed those checks.
Mhm.
And so I've just been curious on that.
Yeah, so our tariff does state that after 12 months of good history that they can request an adjustment.
What happens to the interest earned on the money, on those monies?
So it is returned back to the customer.
The interest?
Mhm. So we have a liability for the actual deposit, and we have a liability that also includes the interest earned on the deposit. So whenever someone does leave the system, then both the original deposit and the interest earned go back to the customer, typically credit to their last bill.
Yes.
So how much is the deposit for electric or water? Is it based on the size of the building or?
It's for residential customers. It's based on whether they have gas heat, electric heat, whether they have water or sewer. So it can range anywhere from $60 to $285, depending on whether it's apartment or house. So kind of a little bit on the size because normally an apartment's probably going to be smaller than most houses. But it's typically just based on what services they have. And then of course, business customers, there's a formula that goes into that based on the type of business and the size of the business.
Expected usage.
Yeah, the expected usage.
I see. Okay.
Any other questions?
In that line, I don't want to get too far ahead of anyone, but you've put me in this chief financial officer role, and one thing I do want to look at is how that looks. I just like to revisit that myself, spend a little time and just see. It's been a while since we've looked at it, and just see if there's any adjustments that might make sense.
That sounds good. And we might compare to what other companies do or utilities.
We have been offering for residential customers to sign up for service online. Today's just residential. It would be I would like to expand that to other customer service, or I should say other customer classes. Part of that would be making our deposit structure much easier to follow in an electronic world. So just to put it out there, that's something we're looking at.
I think that'd be an improvement. And maybe it would take less time for our customer service people then to not have to explain as much.
I definitely see an opportunity to make this a positive customer service change potential.
I assume you're also saying to go back and look at making sure those deposits are right-sized to fit
Exactly.
all the customer classes, right?
So can people still sign for other people so they don't have to pay the deposit?
Yes, they can still have a co-signer.
And we have all that laid out in our tariff, but that's what we'll be looking at. So.
Potentially, once if we roll out, finish our AMI project, there could be a suggestion from staff to roll in a new rate like a prepaid program. In that way, it's a kind of do away the deposit requirement. It's a pay as go. That can be easier for a lot of our customers.
Yeah, I think that's good, and AMI offers a lot of possibilities for streamlining things.
Correct.
All right, thank you, April.
Thank you.
Moving next to page 27. Page 27 is our finance department. Katrina beside me, our finance director, also has a very, very large hand in putting this budget together. Walking through this, you'll notice we're down 7% for the year over year. As I mentioned earlier, when the general section, or I should say the administrative section, now my salary has been moved out of there as well. So that's just an example of how one move affects another department. There's really one change, one major difference within the budget that's software services. And now, Katrina, I'll let you talk a little bit about it. I think it's exciting and let you take at it.
We put some money in there to explore the idea of having some kind of like document management workflow type software. We've actually started looking around. We've watched demos for 2 products so far. We're just in the exploratory stage right now. But basically from the purchase order to the payment, to automate that process, we have multiple buildings and this paperwork goes back and forth sometimes a crazy amount of time. So just to make us more efficient. It would also, the ones we're looking at, seamlessly integrate into our accounting software. So you could pull up a transaction, click on a link, and it opens up all the documents from the requisition all the way to the invoice. So it's all in one document. So it's something we're hoping to, if it's approved, to implement this fall after audit.
So outside of that, that is really the only significant difference within the finance department. I'd be glad to answer any questions, or Katrina and I answer any questions within the line item detail. All right. I think we'll have Leanne come up and assist us with the fleet services budget on page 28. On page 28 is the layout of expenses we're proposing for next year, and on page 57 is the line item detail. This budget is down, proposed for next year versus this year, down 19%. As we discussed yesterday in our telecom section, a big part of that is working to allocate our expense to the right department, the right division. You'll notice on line 85, gas and oil has a significant decrease in budget because we've worked to put gas and oil into the appropriate place. Before, it was put in here and allocated to the 3 main divisions that drive that cost. But that's just an example of intercompany transfers between the budget items that have caused that reduction. But overall, there's everything. Is there anything, Leanne, you'd like to point out or about this year?
Yeah, you'll probably notice software services is up quite a bit. We've added some software, and also I think some of the stuff that we've had in the current year was not charged to the correct account or sub-account. But one that we have added is called collective data, and mechanics use that. And what that is it creates a history for each one of our vehicles or pieces of equipment. Everything that the mechanics do stays on file with that. All the service orders, the service history. We have something called Helm Publications. It is through Ford. It's a warranty/service information. All of our mechanics are Ford certified, meaning that they can do Ford warranty work, and Ford pays us to do that. We also have an IDS software that's also through Ford for diagnostics. Most of our fleet is Ford. We do have something called YTech, which is a software for Chrysler. And something additional for this year for $4,200 is the collective data that I was talking about first is now we've gotten the mechanics iPads for each of their stations so that when they're working on something, they can enter the stuff into collective data. So if we do this hosting, they're able to do that at their iPads. Right now, they can't access that program until we get this. So I think that'll benefit them. Everything else is pretty much the same. Well, we've increased the travel and training just a little bit to allow for ASE certifications and one fluid power testing for one of the mechanics. For other services, that includes the parts cleaner service, the tank registration for our underground fuel tanks, and also a company comes and picks up our used oil filters. And I think that is it. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Since, Leanne already, she's got multiple hats looking at a support services budget. If we can move over to page 33, Leanne can stay here to address that. The detail, line item detail, walking through each detailed expenditure is on page 63. Year over year from projected proposed budget for next year versus the current year we're in is a reduction of 7.5%. Leanne, is there anything you'd like to point out within support services?
Just a few changes. The cell phone expense is a little bit more this year to allow for 2 new cell phones, the replacements. For our safety expense, our department buys a lot of the first aid supplies for all of the departments, and we spent quite a bit this current year on stuff for hydration in the summer months for the field employees. So I'd like to increase that a little bit. We've asked for an increase in travel and training due to new employees and also several promotions within. We have several new supervisors who have never been supervisors before. The support services expense is down because that is where we used to budget the expenses for the facilities locators. They are no longer in our department. They're in the network operations, so that's why that is lower.
It is worth noting, as you remember, during we transitioned to the new network operations center, and there were some expenses, locators and others that moved from support services to the NOC. So that does contribute to the reduction in the year-over-year budget for support services.
So I had a question on page 63. I think the last item there of freight and other adjustment. So it included weekly UPS fee.
Yes.
Is that a fee to have them come to us, or what is
Yes,
that?
they stop by our service center every day to see if we have something going out, because we do ship out.
Do we have something that frequently?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay.
We'll have returns or something that needs to be sent back to a manufacturer for repair. Sometimes we have documents that we send that way. Not very often, but sometimes we do.
Okay. I guess, yeah, I think the cost is,
The UPS weekly fee is only $29 a week.
Okay.
Katrina could probably help me with the freight and other adjustments.
It's all the freight for all inventory
Yeah.
purchases.
so, yeah, it just 26,500 seemed to add up quite a bit.
Most of that is the
Is freight.
inventory, incoming inventory, where
I
we're
see.
paying freight to the,
I
for the
see.
vendor to send it
Okay.
to us. And that's where
UPS
that-
was $29.
Yeah, $29 a week
Okay.
is the UPS fee.
I see. Okay. Thanks.
There are some support services capital items on pages 15 and 16 that, if you wouldn't mind flipping over to page 15 and 16, and we can work through those
Okay.
to wrap up support services.
All right. The security/support services line 625, that's in-house security upgrades. Our security department does those. Let's see. We have $9,800 for furniture. There's a couple of new desks that we would like to get. Miscellaneous equipment. We don't really have anything in particular that we know of that we might need in the coming year, but maybe some large tools or something. There is a floor cleaning machine that we could use at all buildings. It is one that the operator rides on, and it would actually, it's small enough to fit in offices that have floors like this, just anything that's non-carpeted. That could be beneficial even in our warehouse or our garage. It's pretty versatile. We have two truck replacements. They fall within the fleet replacement policy. And there is a John Deere zero-turn mower that needs to be replaced, and a Ventrac mower. This would be an addition. This is a tractor / mower that can be used on slopes like this bank out here, or the reservoir, or there's places at the service center that could benefit from using it, and also the water plant.
On those two vehicles that you mentioned, they're under the knock, so they used.
Are they?
Well, it says that in the first column on page. I'm looking page 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. I flipped over to 6. No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
It's line 650 and 655 under her section.
Yeah, I have 2 trucks in my department, and then the knock has 1 truck up for replacement. The trucks in my department are line 650 and 655.
Okay. So the one for the knock is just if it's emergency, they drive out there? Or?
No, that is a facilities locator, the guys who go out and mark the underground lines.
Oh, I see, and that's part of that department. I get it. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. We'll have Diane come up and help us with human resources. We're looking at page 29 and the line item detail for human resources. For each individual scheduled expenditure, they're scheduled out on page 58. You'll notice on columns 2 compared to columns 4, year-over-year budget proposed versus what we're in this year is a 4% reduction. There is really nothing that stands out year over year. Is there anything, Diane, you'd like to highlight?
I just wanted to mention that under continuing education, that includes company-wide training on EEO and new supervisor training, also tuition reimbursement, and our supervisor drug and alcohol training. So it's not just training for the human resource employees. Under employee assistance, there is a small increase there. We'd like to issue an RFP and consider other providers for employee counseling for personal and emotional concerns so that we can have happier, healthier, less stressful employees. And generally that will make them more productive and have less, attendance, less absences and that kind of thing. Let's see. Other than that, unless the board has any questions, like David said, overall it's consistent with our year-to-date estimated expenses and 4% less than what we budgeted for the 18-19 fiscal year.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate it. Next, we'll move on to information technology on page 30 with the line item details, scheduling out each expense and line by line on page 59 and 60. You'll notice the proposed budget for 1920 compared to the current fiscal year is down 1.25%. We're proposing no new staff within IT, and really the only change that sticks out to me is, just the large expenditures necessary for computer and software services. Casey, is there anything you'd like to highlight in your budget?
No, not too much. The main thing I want to point out, we're a little under on the training spend for this year. We had set aside funds for security analyst position that didn't get funded, and so those wound up not getting used. So we're reducing that for next year. And then we have, as typical, every year we have a lot of software licenses that hit late in the year. And so that's why it looks like we're way under on our software services, but just hit late in the year.
So you expect that to?
Oh yeah,
True up.
we know that. Yeah, it gets very close. Yeah. You want to talk about capital?
We do have some capital expenditures for IT, as you would imagine. We can go through those right now. Let's see here. Page 15?
Yep.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead.
So this year we're sliding some money from one category to another. This is a year where we need to do some heavy replacements in our network equipment, and we're replacing some core switching gear that's going to require some 10 gig switches, and so we're sliding some money out of the servers, data, and storage. About 40 grand, moving that up to network hardware for this year. And I did notice just a minute ago that it's supposed to go back to normal in 2021.
Okay.
But if you notice years 22, 23, 24, it goes back to our normal spending levels for those categories. And we just made a mistake and copied, I think, this year's into next year's as well. So that basically what you see in 2022 will also be 2021. But it's a flat change. It's no overall change to the capital budget.
I think in 8 years.
Yeah.
All right.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to meter reading. Looking at page 31 of our budget to show an overall summary of the expenditures associated with meter reading, and the line item detail you can find on page 61. So I've got Tim, if you'd like to come up. I've got our meter reading supervisor, Tim. I just feel like picking on today in a good way. Just had not far from just having 25 years of service at FPB, so appreciate that, Tim. Looking at your budget, you can see we had budgeted 336. I'm looking at, yes, the right one. Down 5% year over year. One thing I would point out on line 40, on the actual budget for this year for meter reading, you'll notice that we have just right at $500 with a budget of $15,000. We have our maintenance contract on our meter reading equipment used to actually read the meters that comes due and paid right around June every year. So we do expect to use all those funds, and you can see we're off and running with what the new meter reading maintenance agreement contract will be around $16,500 the next couple of years, or for sure next year we already have it. There's really nothing else I'd look at pointing out. The gas and oil is the same issue we discussed, moving and lining up expenditures in the correct, more closely aligned in the correct department or division. But there are no new hires expected in meter reading. We actually just down one recently. But I'd be glad to go through, and with Tim here, anything you'd like to talk about relating to our meter reading department.
Do we need to replace the person that left?
We're going to see if we can't make it through. Considering what you look at here in our budget, you've got a fine line of, we're making a large transition in the way we do meter reading. So we're going to just play it by ear and see how it goes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Not too bad, not too bad. All right. We've got Kim in safety. Moving on to our safety department, page 32, with our line item detail for safety on page 62. Proposed budget for next year versus the current year is down 3.2%. No new employees expected to be added to the department. And as you can see, comparing all line items, we are at or below on every category, except for employee welfare, which is a little out of your control. No, that is some other programs we have in safety, yeah. Is there anything you'd like to highlight?
The only thing is that we are, I guess, more or less flat. Our department does the education, and then for some of the other departments, the expenses fall in ours. And the same thing for some of the small equipment. It's equipment that we would use to be shared among all the other operating departments. The other thing is that really doesn't show up in my budget, but on the workers' comp side, you'll see we'll be coming next month with a $12,000 reduction from last year on workers' comp, which will be below $100,000 for our premiums, which is pretty significant. When I started, 20 some years ago, it was well over $200,000 our premium.
So what's brought it down?
Our experience rating has improved, is the main factor. Several years ago, there were changes to the workers' comp law that made insurance markets more favorable in Kentucky, but that's been over 10 years ago. Even since then, our workers' comp rates have come down steadily, and it's because of our experience rating and our programs and investments really that we put in safety manifests in workers' comp savings.
So mentioned they manifest in workers not being out and all the other things that
the productivity,
you never see the advantage of employees that aren't hurt. You don't see those costs, so
exactly
it manifests itself in a lot of those programs as well. But we never see the
the
cost.
workers' comp is just the drop in the bucket, and really in the savings that we see when people aren't hurt and get to come to work every day. So I think safety is a good investment. Apparently the board does too, so we appreciate that.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. I'd like to move on to our last administrative support department, Network Operations Center. We've talked about quite a bit this year. Bring Darren up as our supervisor of that department. We're looking at page 34 with the line item detail on page 64. Of course, just starting operations this current fiscal year. Everything is new and moving forward, but we had a really good response, I believe, so far to customer feedback and also support within the board level and within our company. So, Dan, is there anything you'd like to highlight as we look forward to next year? And I know we've got a few capital items too.
Yeah, and moving into the first year, we don't know what we don't know, but a majority of our cost is it's personnel, it's people in the seats. Probably the biggest ticket items we have are our backup rollover service that we've maintained, for call surge, and a couple of things that we absorbed from support services, like the facilities locate fees we pay each year to Kentucky 811, a couple of simple fee things, but really for our department, not much. I mean, most of it revolves around, I think, personnel and operating cost. I was trying to think. I don't know any big capital items that we have above and beyond that really for the year. And of course, we kind of hashed this out a couple of months ago, so I don't think there's any new surprises since then.
The main thing that we'll find moving forward with the NOC is, of course, having the facility locate function.
Yes.
Is replacement of vehicles for those staff in accordance with our fleet management policy. So we do have proposed half-ton pickup. This is on page 15. To be replaced just due to those, 2 of the 3 criteria we discussed yesterday. year's mileage or when the maintenance outpaces the value of the vehicle. So that is really, really it for this year.
Yeah,
But
other
not,
than our, just what, as we discussed just before the meeting, with your approval of a couple of part-time positions last night, whatever they will cost annually, which really is, I think, minimal, because with new employees, they can only take off so much. So it's not like everyone's going to max out their sick or vacation in the next year. I obviously don't think so. There'll be a little bit of time on the front end where we get those guys in and train them. And then it's just really as needed as someone takes off or calls in sick. But it's still cheaper than either paying an overtime rate to a full-time employee or much cheaper than another full-time employee. So I think that's minimal as
Did
well.
we approve more than one position or just one position as the part-time yesterday?
Just the position of part-time dispatcher.
I see.
We had talked about maybe training a couple,
Oh,
but again, they don't work at the same time just because of people's work schedule. It's more of a pool, if you will, to pull on if we have a vacancy.
It's not a
I see.
fixed role.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know at 911 I had 5 part-timers, and that's just because they all worked a similar job with weird hours, and no one was ever available when I needed them. So it's kind of like go down the call list. Can you work? Can you work? Can you work? I don't anticipate doing that, obviously, that many here, but one definitely or possibly 2, just to be sure we're covered, since it's so critical that we have people in the seats.
And part-time, they're not gonna hit you're not gonna have the retirement costs and all those
No,
benefits.
and they're not.
Right.
They're not going to get close to maxing out their
Yes.
part-time. They're
Just
like,
the amount of money that
what is that, 1,200 hours a year, 1,199? Yeah. No, we would never get
So we
close to that.
approve a maximum of 2. Is that correct?
I think what we're talking about is having sufficient pool of folks that whenever they're sick and vacation, that we can say, hey, someone's out, we need you to fill in. So whether that's, to me, it doesn't, a pool of 5 would be fine or less, but we need part-time.
Cost, no matter how many there are.
The cost
We
doesn't
approved the
change.
category.
Working at the same time.
But I think we're not doing.
We
that.
need to staff
Yeah,
the
no.
department though. So if we need 2 people to come in, say 2 call in sick, that life happens and we have no dispatchers, we need to call in 2 dispatchers.
Whether you have 10 or 5 out there that you can call from, it doesn't cost you more money. They're just available. If you only have 2 and you're gonna call this person on the spur of the moment and they're busy that day, my personal opinion is I don't think 2's gonna be enough people.
Maybe define part-time to me, because it sounds like you're talking about a pool of possible.
Right.
So what is their?
And they're only gonna be used on a part-time basis.
How about on call?
Yeah, on call.
More on
On
call
call.
than, yeah.
That's the way
Right.
it's
So
done.
it's
Yeah.
up to
They're not
100
part-time.
hours per quarter or something?
So
No scheduled hours.
versus a part-time person that you may have here now, maybe a part-time administrative person. I don't know if you have any now. What's the difference in the relationship with the plant board? Yeah, I know you're not getting the benefits, but.
It's like our part-time videographers. It's like our part-time videographers we have now. When we have people come to video the game of the week or whatever, there's
Or
a
just all
pool.
call people.
There's a pool, and somebody in cable will call them and say, hey, can you work this game? If they can, they come and work for set hourly rate. If they work 3 hours, they get paid 3 hours. It's the same kind of idea.
Right, and if you had one of those employees available and they said no or 2, you would be in trouble. But they have, I think there's 10 or 12 of them.
I don't know how many.
I think that's their pool.
Right.
that
So
they
it's no
can call
cost to
for.
us to have.
It is good to have a pool. For example, in the beginning, we're going to have, just like hire a new employee, go through all the tests, the screening, and also going to be a good training ground. Eventually, if we need other from them, become a full-time employee.
Correct.
That is not, with the approval of the part-time position, we don't have those funds budgeted here, so we'll put together and just some assumptions on how many hours could be used. And have that in the next draft to the board, so. Well, because whenever we have sick and vacation time allowed, so whenever employees off, we're still paying them for the time off due to that sick and vacation, plus we'll have to pay a part-time person. So we'll have to account for
added expense.
But I think it would be a pool of money of how much you expect that you would do, and then it would be whether you had a pool of 10 employees or 7 employees out there, you know, you're just gonna use that amount of money up that you.
I guess my question centers around not so much the cost, but what their affiliation with the planning board will be. You know, potential liability issues if something happens or whatever. So when you say we approve the position of a part-time and you say it could be 5, it could be 10, we're talking about 10 individuals. And now I'm trying, the bigger that pool becomes, that's why I'm asking, what is our relationship with those people? And what potential liabilities do we have with those guys? What access do they have to the organization when they're not working? Because if they're working in the NOC, they're going to be working inside the building. So when you say 1, 5, 10, I'm not comfortable in going with that for me. I need to know how many people we're talking about, because there are other liabilities, as I see it, that could come about because you have unlimited amount of people available in the pool to come in and work, all having access to the building, all having the ability to come to the building and get injured and mess up the workers' comp the safety we just talked about. So, I mean, there's a lot of, I'm not comfortable with the however many we think we might want to have right now.
Diane, would you mind coming up and talking about how we bring employees on and the extensive work we go through to get people, you know, brought on to the company, that really there'll be no...
Yeah, even though they're part-time, they're gonna go through the same hiring process.
Yeah.
They're gonna go through the same standards we hire any employee. So
We
I
would
would-
do background and
Sure.
reference checks. We would send them for pre-employment drug screens. One thing is, under our employee guidelines, there are different categories of employees, and one of them is part-time, regular or full part-time, or a regular full-time employee or regular part-time employee. Then there is a on-call status. And with an on-call employee, and we have similar employees who are videographers in our telecom or in media services, and you know, they work as needed, but we go through screening, you know, before they're brought on and receive, you know, orientation and training. My understanding from talking to Darren yesterday is he anticipated just a couple that he would have, you know.
I don't have any problem with that, Dan. My issue is when we went from 1 to 2, well, 2 I thought we were doing yesterday.
Yes.
And then Vince said 5 and it could be 10. Here's the issue for me, is if you are on our rolls as an employee, whatever their classification, then there are certain liabilities that perhaps potentially could be raised by those employees if they do some damage, harm, or whatever out in the community, representing themselves as legitimate FPB people. So when you say it can be 10s, that's, you know, now we're not approving a number. We're approving you the ability to go out and do whatever your heart imagines. And I'm saying, my question is, what are there potential liabilities that just having any number of employees, I mean, one employee you can have liability, but there's liability that comes with any employee, whether it be they do some damage externally, they come in here and hurt themselves internally, and there's liabilities. So I'm not comfortable with saying, okay, we approve a part-time position, then there can be 1 person, 5, 10, just how big of the pool you want it to be, because there's liability there, and the more numbers you have, the greater the probability. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not talking about what they are, their classification. There is liability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
I can tell you, I don't want 10 employees. We only have 8 full-time. I would prefer to have whatever that number is, a couple, 2 or 3, very dependable part-time people that I can pull on. The problem is, if I train a lot of people, I can't keep them trained because there's not going to be enough work for them to keep them sharp. I would rather have a couple of sharp people that I use more frequently than people I don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know,
All
what I
I'm
mean?
asking for is a number.
Yeah.
And then we approve the
And,
number. If it's
you know,
2, then that's what we need to approve.
A few months
But
from
not
now,
just whatever we think we might need, whenever we think we might need.
if we do a few months from now, I may come back to David or Gary or Vint and say, you know, here's the deal. Here's what we've been doing. It's working great, or it's not working. I don't really anticipate that, but you know, we don't know until we do it. I can tell you just from past experience, I don't think it would be that demanding. People don't tend to take off that much. I hope we have good employees that don't burn their time as soon as they get it. And obviously we don't want anyone to be sick. So for the most part, people will be here, but summer's here and people will be taking vacations. We have a couple of long-term employees in the NOC who have plenty of time and they may take off some. So it's really just to backfill their vacancies. But for the most part, you know, we hope not to have to use them.
But you never know, because you could have somebody on an extended absence for a medical reason.
Yeah.
The point is well taken what you're saying. All I'm saying is for me to be comfortable, I need to know a definite number of people you think you might need. That's not saying that in the future, 6 months down the road, you might need more. But to say, as I just heard, 1, 2, 5, 10, that tells me we're giving you, the ability to do however many you want. And that's knowing that there's liability with each one of those potential employees. I think we shouldn't make a decision like that with that.
We split the difference and do 12. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Currently, do we know how many on-call employees we have on the telecommunication part of the business?
Probably 12.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. Because some of them honestly don't work. Like
Those-
they've not worked all year. So
Yeah. We've been tasked to run, use the NOC for example, 2 employees, 12-hour shifts, 24/7. So whatever it takes to accomplish that we're just proposing that this is what's needed. I think we're all talking the same thing.
That's all I'm saying. Well, give me a number, not 1, 2, 5, 10. If it's definitely 15, I mean, if that was legitimate.
Let's go 2. 2 sounds
I'm
good.
just saying that this unlimited approval of unlimited is not the right decision to be making.
Well, it's a role. It's not, it could, a lot of people could fill that role. And I can see the logic in proposing it this way.
I can see the logic in proposing it, but I'm looking at the liability of a legitimate FPB employee because they all will be that, just with a different classification.
Well, are you comfortable saying 2, and then if you need more than 2, you'll come back and speak?
Yeah, well,
So,
excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm getting over something. The reality too in a job like this is people have to be in the seats. So, and I know it's different than anything we've done, but I'll use an example of an employee requesting a vacation. I can't help if they get sick or an extended illness. That if it happens, it happens. It's unfortunate. But take a vacation, for example. Someone says, hey, I want to take a week off next month. So we'll spend that month covering those shifts with overtime or part-time. But, I mean, when it comes down to it, someone has to be there. If I don't have someone to work, your vacation is going to get cut short. Someone has to be there. So, I mean, that's the way there's really no wiggle room. Someone has to be there. We've committed to this thing and we're going to be there to do it. So sometimes it just happens.
I guess I'm comfortable leaving the discretion to you guys, but in deference to Steve's concern, is there just a high-end number you can give us so Steve feels some quantification there and we can move on? Is that 2? Is that 2? Is that 3?
One more question. How many people work in the NOC? How many?
There's 8 NOC dispatcher positions full-time right now, and then myself.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's 8 full-time, so it's the really minimal staffing. There's 4 shifts of 2 people each.
I think I'd be happy with saying up to 3 and leave it up to you with that.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's whatever's good with you all. I mean, it's your decision. And it's really, and I'm okay with even if you want to authorize up to 3, trying a couple. If that doesn't work, then find a third, we don't have to hire them all
But
on the same
are
day.
you trying to be able to replace every one of them in case all 8 of you are
No.
sick or
that'd be
whatever? I mean,
bad.
do you need enough to replace? So I mean, when you go past 2 or 3, are you trying to, replace everybody?
I think one of the things that may be missing here is if somebody calls in sick that morning, and maybe we're not going to cover his overtime, he's got 2 or 3 people that he's going to pick up the phone and say, "Can you come to work? Can you be here in 30 minutes or an hour?" All 3 of those people are not going to be available, so that's kind of what the pool is for. And I was just throwing out a number of 10 as kind of like some upper limit, but you just got to have a pool because 1 or 2 of them may not be available for you that morning.
Or have
And
full-time
that's-
jobs.
Right. So I don't know that we're trying to replace the exact number of people.
The other thing is, with the current employees working the 12-hour shifts, if I say, hey, do you want to work this morning? Well, now they're working 24-hour shifts. So it's pretty demanding. And if they have,
One of them may be able to work 6 hours.
yeah,
Something else to
we've
do.
done things like that. We'll try to split. We'll get it as creative as we can. And that's why I like to know about these things in as much advance as I can, because we'll plan. I tell people, I know at 911, I never denied anyone's vacation. We never had to because we planned for it. We made it work. Sometimes it got tricky if someone called in sick, but we always made it work. But we could not have made it work without some dependable part-time staff to lean on. They saved us more than once.
Yeah, they're hourly and only get paid when they show up
Yeah,
to work.
yeah. I mean, they're trained. They're the equivalent level of training.
Right.
And most of them did a similar job somewhere else. That's what it amounted to. But in that type of operation, you have to have someone you can depend on. So,
Very good. All right. That's our last administrative department. Ms. Rosen, I'll turn it over to you.
So, are there any other questions on the budget, any part of it? David's here and staff is here.
Thank you, Darren.
Okay. If not, I guess we'll just go ahead and, David, you'll be updating the budget for us to consider to approve at the next board meeting or sometime before June 30th.
Yes, ma'am. We what we had thought we would do is come back with the input we've heard for the last 2 days and changes that we've discussed out loud, come to you with a proposed final budget to be approved by the board at our regular June 18th board meeting, which will get us plenty of time before our June 30 deadline.
Is that good with everyone? Okay.
We're here and available, every day. If you all have any more questions, concerns, I'd like you all to definitely, Mr. Zing, all of staff, to make you feel comfortable about casting your vote on the budget. So let us know anything else you need.
Okay. And
Meanwhile, I just want to mention this is just based on what happened in the past and also what we saw could potentially we needed or the board would like us to do. But that's definitely is not a closed book. It's tell us anything you would like to say, then we will bring in that, and then you will make that decision. Meanwhile, just please let us know if you have any concern.
thank you. So the next item on our agenda is request permission to have the chair call a closed session. Move to call closed session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss pending litigation regarding the reservoir. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll go into a closed session. And a second? Second. All in favor? Okay, motion passed. And do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed? Okay. Thank you, everyone.